Welcome to V8 Nation, talking all things motorsport with Rick Kelly and Paul Dumbrell.
Hello everybody and welcome to V8 Nation with Rick Kelly and Paul Dumbrell. And as I welcome you two boys in, some big news just breaking. The fact that we've now got a Twitter account, V8 Nation. Boys, how you doing?
Well, how good is
well.
We've actually made it. We're into our fourth show and we've got a Twitter.
And we're still here.
And we're still here. So, hey, things are going well.
It's going to be a pretty big week, you boys. New Zealand, it's an interesting, I guess, part of the round. You've had a couple of weeks off from points, obviously, with Albert Park being in the middle of it, and you must really be looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been a big couple of weeks just in getting everything ready to ship away to over here in New Zealand. But I think that's all part of it. When we get back home from New Zealand, we've got a very short turnaround over the Easter break to get our cars back in the trucks and off to Perth as well. A bit of news in the F1 over in the last round as well. So pretty hectic week, I think, in motorsport all round.
Mate, it's you look at F1 and we touched on Mark and Red Bull and how quick they were at Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. They've travelled to Sepang or Malaysia for the second race, and Red Bull literally just dominated again. Or maybe Vettel, he really was a class of the field, and once again he didn't have the margin what he had at the Grand Prix, but certainly he was number one. Webber a little bit disappointing again. There's a little bit of a drama in his race at the start of the race. I don't think he had KERS. He had a drama with the KERS, so he went from third on the grid to eighth or ninth on the first lap, actually going into turn one. So they've got a bit of work to do. Obviously, Vettel's he's 2 wins out of 2, so Aussie Mark's got to step up to the mark a bit more.
Yeah, I think so. And from Australia, the Australian Grand Prix, I think they were talking a lot about Mark's car possibly having a bit of a drama with the front wing, which was the cost of some speed for him, which is a little bit of an explanation why he couldn't keep up with his teammate Vettel. But again, on the weekend, it brings a question mark back to that a little bit because Vettel's gone again. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the F1 circuit is quite an intense one. It goes to a lot of different tracks, and some of those tracks last year, Mark actually dominated in pretty fantastic circuits like Monaco. So it'd be interesting to see at what point either Vettel slips up or Mark catches him or other teams.
Well, I actually watched the telecast, and Mark was actually quickest all the way throughout practice, and it was only in qualifying that actually Vettel topped him. And Mark sort of said on the interview that he was a little bit frustrated that Vettel was sort of couldn't actually match the pace, and then when it came down to delivering the money, it was the other way around. But I guess that's just the German in him. He's a bit of a dogfight, and he's always there to just push the envelope.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's Australia's big shot at winning a F1 World Championship, particularly in today's championship or this year's championship. So, fingers crossed he gets back up there and really puts a good battle to Vettel. But another young guy, Daniel Ricciardo, is obviously coming up very strong in Red Bull team as well. Test driver at the moment for Toro Rosso. Red Bull's second team, and doing a great job. I think in practice over there, he might have been 14th quickest, I think. So he's getting some miles now at all the tracks that the calendar goes to. And I spent a little bit of time with him at the Australian Grand Prix, and such a good young bloke as well. He's really good to get along with, down to earth, and I think he's pretty speedy.
Mate, now moving on to more important things. Now, you're not in your car for New Zealand this weekend. It's still sitting in the workshop gathering a bit of dust. But, we travel all the way across the Tasman and head to New Zealand, down to Hamilton for the race this weekend. It's going to be another one. It's going to be on for young and old. Soft tyre again this weekend for the first time in New Zealand. It's going to be pretty tough, going out, qualifying and racing. And the weather's going to be a bit variable as well.
Yeah, certainly looks like that from our point of view. It's going to be rain all weekend, and when you go to a track like that, you've got brand new tyres over in New Zealand because you're not actually allowed to cart any tyres with you. We pack all of our trucks up who travel to the airport, and everything gets loaded onto a plane and off it goes, and all your tyres are actually delivered there. So it's a little bit of a tough one. Obviously, Friday practice, you generally like to road your wets in the dry before you run them in the wet themselves. I don't think I'm giving away any secrets there, Freddie. It's been like that for a long time. And it's going to be tough if it is raining to actually do that and road your tyres. So a bit of an interesting weekend, that's for sure. But again, after that, a very short turnaround to go from New Zealand back to back to Australia. Prep your cars, chuck them back in the trucks, all your equipment back in the trucks, and head over to Perth. A big trek.
And actually, my brother Lucas actually got his own single car V8 supercar team. And most of the cars, all the teams are either based in Melbourne or in Brisbane. And as the cars fly over from either Melbourne or the Brisbane port to New Zealand, Lucas actually has to get his truck driven from Melbourne to Brisbane And then they obviously fly from Brisbane, and then on the way back, they fly back to Brisbane, drive all the way down to Melbourne for 2 days, have 2 days to prepare the car, and then have to drive to Perth. So it's even tougher when obviously these single car teams, have to obviously travel to Brisbane or Melbourne.
Is there enough time? There's barely enough time because it is a very quick turnaround. They must just scrape in time for the race.
Well, Lucas actually has to employ 2 truck drivers so they can drive throughout the night to get back in Brisbane in time. So they've got 24 or 36 hours to actually prep the car before they have to get 2 truck drivers to drive to Perth again. So, the calendar always dictates, and there's lots of reasons why races can and can't be on certain weekends. Rick's birthday, obviously, that rules out, one of those. So
when is that, PD?
That is in January, and I think it's January 14.
Nah, wrong.
Damn. I've got it on my phone.
And you would think, Rick, that PD, being the older brother, might have just been able to help the little brother out a little bit, throw him an extra $1 here just to help him be able to get 2 truck drivers. Do you think there's any chance he would do such a thing?
Or lend him maybe one of your FPR cars.
Yeah,
so
good
that
point.
He can prep that back here and send it straight to Perth.
Mate, if I did that, you'd be over the workshop as well, taking photos as well, with the rest of the other category.
It's probably true, but 2 days is a very short time to do that, particularly if you have a bit of a tough time in New Zealand, have a little bit of damage. You can almost just buy grandstand tickets to Perth and watch it. It's not going to be an easy one by any means, but like you said, it's a little bit similar to everyone else. And I think the category is growing that fast that, for us at this stage, we've got 2 sets of bodywork. So one set that's getting prepped now to go to the Perth round. So as soon as we get the cars back from NZ, you just swap your panels and you go to the next round. NASCAR, which we touched on last week, has actually got, or the week before actually, got a couple of cars, sets of cars that go to different events. So one particular driver might have 6 or 8 actual chassis there that they use throughout the year. So it is getting to the point, particularly possibly with Car of the Future, where you do have 1 or 2 cars per driver to try and do this sort of thing and make it a bit easier.
Now, Rico, we were teammates, and we've actually come up with a couple of stories from our year together. Now, New Zealand 2009 or 2010 it might have been. What year it was? Whatever year it was, it's irrelevant. The story's very, very good. We get to the hotel on Sunday night, and we've got a very early flight the next morning, and we're joking around for the day, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I got cotton on to early in the weekend that room service in the hotel. When you rang, they actually didn't know what room you were from. So they actually asked what room you were. And I noted that down early in the weekend and thought I can get this bloke quite well. So Sunday night, I was getting up at like 5 o'clock for a flight. And I rang room service the night before and said, hey, can you please order me 2 big breakfasts, 2 large coffees at 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. in the morning? And I'm in the room opposite me. And anyway, 5:30 in the morning, I hear this knocking on the door, and as room service knocking on Rick's door, and he gets up and he started abusing the poor person.
Oh, no.
But what do? Like, you're already awake.
You could have eaten the breakfast, Rick.
Well, that's the thing. You're already awake. You got a couple of coffees there. You end up just sitting there and having brekkie. So he got me good that weekend. But that was, I think, towards the end of our big battle over the weekend of knocking on each other's door and getting things ordered up in bits and pieces. So it's probably good, I think, that we weren't teammates for longer than 1 year, because the practical jokes were getting worse and worse as they went on. And I don't know if one of us would be here after a few more years of it.
You got a couple of spare days when you get over there to New Zealand, and spare from no racing or no practicing. I'm sure you got a fair bit on. Exactly what do you do from the time you get to New Zealand before you get on the practice round on a Friday?
I guess being in a different country, it's a good chance for us to not only see some things. It's very rare these days with the schedule we've got, but
bungee jumping.
Yeah, that is a good story. Should we touch on that?
No, it's okay. Next week.
Oh, no.
But, service some of our sponsors, because a lot of our sponsors have got Australian and New Zealand branches which are run from here. So most of our sponsors do carry over to New Zealand. And PD, you've been quite busy.
Yeah, it is. I've been really, really lucky to actually be able to go down to Christchurch. What an amazing scenario that was. We saw the big earthquake on the TV in Australia, and then a couple of days later, Japan happens. And unfortunately, it's been sort of the forgotten, obviously natural disaster. So we're going down and touring down there, and really for the Red Cross and the Red Cross Shield Appeal over there to sort of generate some money for the people of Christchurch, and really to show our face over there. It's the least that we can do, travelling all the way over to New Zealand, to actually go and support them, because they've certainly been to hell and back, and it's the least we can do.
Adds a little bit of a special touch too, boys, I assume, getting over there and being involved, and it's always a great event, but also the fact that all the tragedy that's happened, and just only for a couple of hours, people can go out and enjoy it and take their minds off some of the things that are probably happening in their personal lives, or the destruction that's happened. So it must have a little bit of an extra feeling as well. You boys go over there and it can be helped in some small but positive way to them rebuilding their lives.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great thing that PD and his team's done. Being a V8 supercar driver, you're certainly in the position where you can help a lot of people in a lot of different situations. And we do get requests to our team, and I would imagine PD's team and the rest of pit lane on a daily basis from charities of, can you help this, can you help that? And we generally try and align with one main one. But such big things in places like NZ, they're very close to us, obviously. They do follow us, and it's been a good thing that PD and a lot of other teams, including ourselves, have contributed to, that's for sure.
V8 Nation is our Twitter. You can email us anytime you want, v8nation@crocmedia.com, and we know that you get a lot of requests in pit lane because obviously we've got the Onion Vanilla Slice competition coming up later on in the year as well. So really looking forward to that. With Rick Crowley and Paul Dumbrell, this is V8 Nation.
This is V8 Nation with Rick Kelly and Paul Dumbrell.